Martin had never thought that an action born out of love and loyalty could push him to the brink of collapse, but reality turned out to be more brutal than anything he had imagined. On that fateful night 2 years ago, his instinctive and desperate attempt to protect his grandfather dragged him into a whirlwind of dangerous secrets and covert dealings within the Dupree family. Yet, the most frightening part wasn't the truth about what happened that night, but how swiftly Vernon, the family patriarch, took over and manipulated the situation. He didn't just demand Martin's silence. He personally orchestrated the cover-up with the cold detachment of someone far too accustomed to handling crises by burying them. Vernon gave Martin no chance to explain or voice his fear. Instead, he issued a clear order. Martin was not to say a word to his mother or to Smitty, Naomi's current husband. That directive sliced through any hope of empathy, isolating Martin completely within the very home he once believed to be his safest place. For Martin, it felt like a silent sentence. Not only did he have to live with the guilt and constant fear of the truth being exposed, but he also had to endure the growing emotional distance between himself and those he loved. The Dupree mansion no longer exuded its elegant chill. It was now thick with tension and unease. Anita and Naomi clearly sensed something was weighing heavily on Martin, but they couldn't grasp the full picture, and they couldn't help him either, not with Vernon still in control of the narrative. Smitty, a man of decisive action, made no effort to hide his suspicions and reacted with fury. He stated clearly that Martin should not return home at this time. It wasn't just advice, it was a wall, shutting down all of Martin's attempts to reconnect with his family. The door Vernon had closed with his command for silence was the same one Smitty now barred with cold, unyielding detachment. While Martin was tormented in the shadows of a truth left unspoken, another crisis erupted. This time involving Nicole, who had, until the last moment, believed in the honesty of those closest to her. But everything collapsed on July 18th, when she accidentally learned about Martin's horrific night, a colossal secret that her family had kept hidden for 2 years. The most painful part wasn't what Martin had done, but the fact that Ted, the man she trusted, the man she thought would rebuild everything with her, had known the truth all along but chose to remain silent. She couldn't understand why she had been excluded from such a major truth, why she was the last to know, and why the man who once held her hand in her weakest moments had turned his back on her now. Overwhelmed with rage, grief, and betrayal, she made one choice: to leave her parents' house in utter shock. She no longer had the strength to stay in a place where everything familiar had turned to lies. Her conversation with Ted afterward only confirmed that everything had gone beyond repair. Ted admitted that things looked bad, and he had no excuses left. This wasn't his first mistake. In just 2 months, Nicole had caught him lying twice. Once a woman trying to hold on to love, believing they could still make things work. Nicole had now become a clear-eyed, decisive woman. No more tears, no more pleading. She simply told Ted that now he would understand why she had to take the next step. It wasn't a threat, it was the declaration of a well-considered decision to divorce. For Ted, every chance at romantic reconciliation was now definitively closed. Meanwhile, the private lives of other characters were no less chaotic. Eva, Ted's daughter, had let her emotions carry her too far when she gave Thomas a passionate kiss, despite knowing he was in a relationship with Kat. Ted, convinced that his daughter would never hurt anyone, even assured Kat that Eva wasn't that kind of person. But the truth said otherwise. Ted didn't know his daughter as well as he thought. He didn't see the internal conflicts tearing Eva apart, didn't realize she was caught in a whirlwind of emotions and poor choices. This not only put Eva's relationship with Kat at risk, but also revealed the widening gap between Ted and the people around him. Elsewhere, Naomi was trying to keep her family from falling apart. In an emotional conversation with Jacob, she asserted that she had never been prouder to be a Dupree, now that she was standing up to protect everything they had. She reminded Jacob that he was part of the family too, that he couldn't stand on the sidelines at a time like this. But the worry in Jacob's eyes revealed that he knew something, maybe about Martin's secret, maybe another yet-to-be-revealed truth, and it was putting Naomi in a difficult position. Whether Jacob's knowledge would affect their marriage remained unanswered, but their relationship was clearly facing its greatest test yet. In another scene, Naomi appeared with her grandparents, Vernon and Anita, and this time, she didn't hide her concerns. She told them directly that they needed to prepare themselves, because the truth could no longer stay hidden for much longer. Her words rang like a warning bell. All the efforts to protect the family's image, all the meticulous cover-ups Vernon had orchestrated, were starting to unravel under the pressure from within their own household. Nothing can stay in the dark forever, and Naomi knew that better than anyone. The episode concluded with a fierce argument between Bill and Nicole. In a fit of anger, Bill yelled that he had been the one who saved her young son, as if she owed him an unpayable debt. But Nicole wasn't afraid. She was no longer the woman who sought to please others, who stayed in the background to soothe conflict. Now she stood tall, looked Bill in the eye, and said that she was the one handling everything now. It wasn't just a retort. It was a declaration of control, a sign that Nicole had changed. She wasn't waiting for anyone to save her anymore. She would save herself, and the people she loved, on her own terms, even if the cost was separation, loss, or direct confrontation with those once close to her. This episode was a cascade of explosive clashes between past and present, lies and truth, family ties and betrayal. Martin remained trapped in a manipulated truth he wasn't allowed to reveal, while Nicole began her journey to free herself from a relationship built on deception. Ted was slowly losing his place in the hearts of those closest to him, and Vernon, the man who once seemed to control everything, was starting to see it all fracture in his hands. And as the doors of deception creaked open, what lay behind could very well shatter the entire foundation the Dupree family had built over the years. Martin had never imagined that a spontaneous act to protect his grandfather would lead to such a relentless string of tragedies. 2 years ago, in one horrifying night, he was forced to make an unimaginable choice, and that choice became a silent wound spreading through every corner of his family. After the incident, Vernon was the first to step in. He asked nothing about Martin's feelings, cared nothing about his mental scars. All Vernon cared about was how to extinguish the event, how to ensure it wouldn't tarnish the Dupree name. He ordered the cover-up, meticulously planned every detail, and forced Martin into absolute silence. No telling his mother, no telling Smitty. No one could know. Martin, trembling with fear and racked with self-betrayal, could only nod and obey. He had no choice. All he had left was an existence confined within the cold walls of the mansion he once called home. But from that moment on, that house was no longer safe. The coldness in Vernon's eyes, the silence from everyone around him. It all built an invisible prison that held Martin for 2 long years. And then, cruelly, the truth began to leak. Nicole learned about it at the worst possible moment. She was at her parents' home when she accidentally overheard the truth about that dreadful night. First came shock, then pain. But what she couldn't forgive wasn't the event itself. It was that everyone, even Ted, had known and said nothing. Ted had hidden it from her for 2 years. She looked at the man who once swore he'd never lie to her, the one who once held her and promised she'd never be alone, and she no longer recognized him. She ran. She couldn't stay there, couldn't breathe in that suffocating air. Her mind swirled with endless questions. Why was she left out? Why did no one believe she deserved to know the truth? And the most painful question, what was she to them? A fragile thing to be protected? Or an outsider with no right to be involved? When she finally confronted Ted, everything crumbled. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply looked him in the eyes and realized that every feeling she once had was now gone. She didn't love him the same way anymore, didn't trust him, didn't want to hold on. She began preparing for what came next. Divorce. A simple word, but one that carried a long phase of separation, inner turmoil, and irreversible decisions. She didn't do it out of rage. She did it because she knew she deserved truth, unconditional love, a relationship without deceit. Meanwhile, in another corner of the mansion, Martin faced the threat of being cast out of the very place he called family. Smitty, once a close brother-in-law, was now the first to say Martin shouldn't return home. No sympathy,
No camfer tinguin braç.
Only suspicion, restrained anger, and a cold rejection. Martin felt like a stranger in his own life. Anita, Naomi, Vernon were all there. But no one said anything. They just stood and watched him break, and no one stepped forward. No one asked how he felt. No one asked if he had anything to say. They just stood there in silence, thinking it was the way to protect the family. But that silence was what was killing Martin, little by little. At the same time, Eva and Thomas were drowning in the dangerous emotions of youth. They kissed, ignoring all boundaries, defying all taboos. Eva knew Thomas was with Kat, yet still ran toward him like a moth to a flame. And when Ted, her father, insisted to Kat that his daughter would never do such a thing, that Eva wasn't that kind of person, the audience could only stay silent in the face of the brutal truth. Ted knew nothing. He didn't understand his daughter, didn't see that Eva was playing with fire, and she was the one lighting the flames to burn down everything around her. She was walking into a dangerous zone, and unless she stopped, it would all collapse. Naomi, who had always tried to keep everything under control, now realized it was slipping from her grasp. In a rare moment at home, she confided in Jacob that she had never been prouder to be a Dupree, now that she was standing up to protect everything. She reminded Jacob that he was part of the family too, that he couldn't stay on the sidelines. But Jacob's worried eyes betrayed that he knew something, maybe about Martin, maybe something Naomi didn't know, and that was becoming a looming threat to their marriage. Naomi wasn't naive. She knew the truth always finds its way out, no matter how deeply it's buried. When she stood before Vernon and Anita, she was no longer their little granddaughter. She was a strong woman who knew clearly that the secrets the family was hiding couldn't stay buried forever. She told them directly that they needed to prepare themselves, because the truth would soon come to light. She didn't want to be the one to break the family, but she couldn't keep living a lie either. And finally, just as everything seemed ready to explode, the confrontation between Bill and Nicole erupted. Bill, furious, shouted that he was the one who saved her precious son, as if she owed him something priceless. But Nicole was no longer the fragile, wounded woman of the past. She didn't back down. She wouldn't let the past be used as a weapon to manipulate her emotions. She looked him straight in the eye and declared that she was now the one handling everything. The episode ended at a fever pitch. No one could hide anything anymore. Carefully guarded secrets were cracking. Once solid relationships were shaking. And those who thought they had control were standing on the edge of chaos. The Dupree family, once a symbol of power and unity, was now a web of secrets, lies, and irreversible mistakes. Each character was facing the consequences of their choices. And as the final door of secrets opened, no one knew what waited on the other side. Only one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. TV soap news and spoilers for more updates on Beyond the Gates.